Hi guys, today I'm going to be doing my May reading wrap up. My exams are finally done, so I am super happy. I've got all summer to read and I was really pleased because I managed to read 9 books during May, which was way more than I expected. I actually had a really good reading month, except I either really loved the books I was reading or really hated them. There didn't seem to be any in between. It was either a really extreme love or a really extreme hate. So let's get into the books and then I can talk and rant and also talk about how much I loved some of these books. So unfortunately the first book I read this month was A Court of Wings and Ruin by Sarah J Maas. I say unfortunately because honestly this is the worst book I think I have ever read in my life. And I know that lots of people are really big fans of Sarah J Maas's books. I used to be one of them before I read A Court of Wings and Ruin, and I just can't stand them anymore. Don't give me hate, this is just my opinion. I know some people can get very vocal about people who diss their favourite books, but I just did not enjoy this book whatsoever. I was really looking forward to it. I downloaded it on my Kindle and I spent a whole day reading it. I actually did finish this book because I wanted to see what the ending was like. There were bits throughout that were really bad and really problematic, but I thought she might be able to turn it around, and she just didn't. Nothing happened to make this book better. So the main problem I had with ACOWAR was its treatment of the only bisexual character in there, and it was so badly written and so badly done that I wanted to throw the book across the room. I just wanted to get it out of my sight, but I couldn't because it was on my Kindle, so that was a problem. When the rest of your books have been all white, all straight characters, and you try and turn this around in the last book, it just won't work because you end up sticking to stereotypes and really problematic representations of the characters that you are trying to portray. So for example, I'm not going to spoil it. This is not a spoiler because I know some people are a bit annoyed with me like, don't spoil the book, but this is not a spoiler. One of the characters in there, who is a minor character, it has no effect on the plot whatsoever, is bisexual, and the way that they are portrayed is in such a hypersexual way that that is the only trait they have. They're constantly referred to having threesomes and they're constantly referred to as being extremely sexual, and it's such a stupid stereotype that, to be honest, I don't know how somebody didn't pick up on this. I don't know how an agent or an editor or a copy editor or anyone didn't pick up on this, and I don't know how she thinks that she can write a character in such a way that's so insensitive, and it's just really badly written. The whole book was lazy. It was really lazily written. I feel like it was written really fast and then not edited well, and I feel like the sentences were poorly written and so many phrases are repeated. The characters just didn't really represent the characters who I loved in the previous books, and I know that the previous books did have issues that I didn't pick up on at the time, but a lot of people talked about. But this one was just so bad that I won't read another book of hers again. This is the last Sarah J Maas book that I ever read, and I've just given up completely on her books now, and I will refuse to ever talk about her books again. I'm so annoyed about it. I'm still so upset. The book actually made me cry because I was so upset at the representation in it. I just can't believe somebody is allowed to write like that. I'm still so annoyed. I'm not upset anymore. I'm angry, and it takes a lot to make me angry about a book that I've read. So yeah, there's also other stuff. There's acephobia in there, and it is still really white and straight, but you kind of feel like she's dumped characters in there just so people can't accuse her of writing in such a way, and it really annoys me. I'm so annoyed. So I gave this book 1 star. I think it's the only book I've ever given 1 star that I've actually finished, and I hate it. I really hate this book. I hate it. After being so disappointed with ACOWAR, I decided to read something that I knew I would enjoy, I knew that would have good representation, and this book was The Seafarer's Kiss by Julia Ember. This is a Little Mermaid retelling, but with a twist. So I really love mermaids. I love mermaid books. I love mermaid TV shows. I always wanted to be a mermaid when I was younger, which I think I reference every time I talk about this book or other mermaid books. I just love them, so I knew I was going to really enjoy this. It has a bisexual main character, the representation was done really well, so it definitely restored my faith in humanity and authors, because that is exactly what I needed. I really liked the main character Ursula, who wasn't perfect and who made mistakes, but you could kind of see why she did, and all the characters in here were really good. I kind of wish it was a bit longer, to be honest. That was my only complaint. I didn't feel like there was enough time to get to know the characters fully, and I would have loved to have explored a lot more of the world, but for a shorter book it was really good and I would highly recommend it. It's one of those books that you can read in a day or two. I know I read it in I think an afternoon and I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really great and I'm looking forward to reading more of Julia Ember's books. I think she's a real talent to watch out for and I would definitely recommend this. I think it's one to read over the summer. For a shorter book, it sits under 200 pages. A lot is packed in and you do get a good concept of the world, and a lot of mythology is in here too, which I really enjoyed. A lot of different mythology, not the type of thing you find in books or YA books even, so that was really nice too, and I think that Julia Ember has done her research really well. She's really sensitive to her readers' feelings, which is always great, and I rated this 4 stars. After that I read Windfall by Jennifer E. Smith, which I was quite excited to read actually, because I didn't enjoy Jennifer E. Smith's The Statistical Probability of Love at First Sight. That is a tongue twister and a half. I must have read it about 3 or 4 years ago now and I just didn't enjoy it at all. I thought it was pretty boring, to be honest, and I didn't like it that much, but I was quite excited about the premise of this because it is about 2 teenagers who win the lottery, and I think that's a really interesting concept and there's a lot that you can do with that, and Jennifer E. Smith really delivered on this book. I really liked all the characters. I thought I would have done exactly as they did if I was in a similar situation, although I don't think I'll ever win the lottery now before I turn 18. They had quite complex relationships and motivations, which was nice to see, and the paths that these 3 teenagers who you follow go on are very different, and I liked how they all impacted each other and changed the courses of each other's lives, and the relationships they had together were really close-knit, and that made it very interesting to read about. I think it is a really cool idea to think about what you would do if you won the lottery, aged, I think they're about 17 or 18 in the book, because I'm that age now and I can't imagine what I would do with all that money, because I don't know how much it is, but it is a lot, like hundreds of millions I think, that Theo in the book wins. I think I don't know what I would do, and so the way that she explores it is really interesting and it's also quite fun too. That's what I wanted it to be. I didn't want it to be all serious, but it's a good mix of serious and fun. After not enjoying the Statistical Probability of Love at First Sight, I was really pleased to then enjoy a Jennifer E. Smith book, because I knew it wasn't her writing, I knew it was probably just me, and I didn't enjoy that book at the time. So I am really pleased that I enjoyed Windfall. It was just a nice light read. I read it I think in about an afternoon in the sun, which was really nice, and I would highly recommend it for summer as well. So I also rated Windfall 4 stars. Then I read Truth or Dare by Pratt. I've been excited to read this for ages, ever since I first heard about it, because I am a huge fan of Pratt's books. I love Trouble, which is her debut book, which is all about teenage pregnancy, which is some of my favourite books to read, and I also loved Remix, which was her 2nd book. This is her 3rd published book with Walker Books, and it is about 2 teenagers called Clare and Seth who start a YouTube channel doing dares and also doing truths, which is why the book is called Truth or Dare, to raise money and awareness for Seth's brother who has a brain injury. It's told in a very interesting way because the first half of the book is told from Clare's perspective, and then it gets to the middle of the book and then you turn it over and you read Seth's. So you get the same story from 2 different perspectives. So you read the first half, you kind of think about what you like about each character, and then you turn it over and you read it from the other character's perspective, which is obviously going to be different, and I liked that because in some books you get one straight perspective and you don't consider that that character might have biases, but in this you get both sides of the story, and it's also a really beautifully designed book in this way. I always really worry when I'm reading books about YouTube, because I'm a YouTuber and I know all about the technical side of things and I know what it's like to run a channel, so I worry when I read books about YouTube that the author will handle it really badly and it will just read like somebody who doesn't use YouTube is writing a book. But the YouTube side of Truth or Dare was handled really well and I was really pleased to see that. Pratt is a really good researcher. I feel like her books are so realistic that you feel like you're watching them in front of you, or you feel like you even are the characters. I think I would trust Non to write anything and she would do a good job. I don't have to worry with her, which is nice. I mean, after I'd read some really bad books previously in the month, I was really worried all month about what I was gonna read for the rest of it and how the representation in those books were gonna be, but I knew that I was safe in Non's hands and I would highly recommend any of her books if you haven't read them already. But I think that Truth or Dare is a real standout book and one of my top choices for the summer. I gave this 5 stars because it's Non Pratt and I love her and I love this book. Then after that I was in deep revision, revising for sociology mostly, so I'm not going to talk through my sociology textbook to you. None of you want to hear that, but I did read The Great Gatsby for my English literature exam. I read this last summer, but I reread it because it's not one of my strong points. I do The Great Gatsby and Test the D'Urbervilles, which you'll see if you watched my English literature video that I posted a few weeks ago. I really enjoyed it when I read it the first time, but I actually much preferred it the second time round. I could really delve into the nitty-gritty parts of it and understand why F. Scott Fitzgerald is such a fantastic writer. I did talk about this in my English literature video, so I'm not going to talk about it in great detail, but I would say that if you haven't read it yet, you definitely should, and it's a really accessible classic to read. If you're maybe a bit wary and a bit nervous to read something that was written quite a long time ago, I don't think you can go wrong with The Great Gatsby. It will really ease you into that different style of writing. Now that my exams have finished, I have taken a lot of pleasure in reading a lot of the books that I wanted to read but couldn't because of all the revision I had to do. And the first book I finished was The Outrun by Amy Liptrot. Wow, this book is amazing. It's going to be on my end of year favourites list for sure. I really loved it and had such an emotional connection to it. I bought this originally because I'm trying to read through some of the books that were on the Wainwright Prize. So I've read Landmarks and I've also read The Shepherd's Life, and this was the winner actually, which is really interesting because I can see why. The other books were really good and I also gave them 5 stars, but I think the emotional connection you have with The Outrun when you're reading it is what makes it just that tiny bit better. It is an autobiographical work about Amy, who was born on the Orkney Isles, which is just above Scotland if you don't know, and the book opens with her being brought onto the island when she is born and her father leaving as he has manic episodes. The book really starts with Amy moving from Orkney to London, where she has an alcohol addiction, and the book then documents her addiction as she goes through a rehabilitation and moves back to Orkney. It is a nature writing book, which all the Wainwright Prize books are, but I liked how she had comparisons between her life and the environment and nature around her. I thought it was very cleverly written in that way. The analogies that she has between her life and her environment is also really great too, and it's a very cleverly written book. She has great control over the phrases and words she uses, and she really understands the place she's writing about, which helps too. I haven't seen many people talk about The Outrun on BookTube yet, but I'd like to see more because I think it's a book you can't help but love, and I gave it 5 stars. You'll see me talk about it a bit more in the future, I should think. Then I read one of my most anticipated books of the year, which is Lord of Shadows by Cassandra Clare. This is a sequel to Lady Midnight, which I read last year, and it was everything I could have wished for and more. I love Cassandra Clare's books. I went through a massive Shadowhunter phase a few years ago where I read all the books. I think this is something like my 29th Cassandra Clare book now, including novellas, and I love them every single time even more. The more I read of Cassandra Clare, the more I fall in love with her books. I went on such an emotional roller coaster with this book. If you'd be interested in seeing a full review with spoilers and non-spoilers, let me know, because I think I can't really do it justice by talking about this in a wrap-up. But if you haven't read any of Cassandra Clare's Shadowhunter books yet, or if you've read the rest but haven't started on Lady Midnight and Lord of Shadows, she just gets better and better. The more books she writes, the more she improves, and I don't think that's even possible, but it's true. So I can do a separate video for this because there are so many thoughts that I have about this book and what's going to happen in the rest of the series. I need the next book immediately, but it's coming out in 2019, which is so unfair. How am I supposed to wait? I gave this 5 stars, but I wish I could give it 5 million because it deserves it. The second to last book I read in May was The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood. I decided to read this because the TV series has come out. It's been out in the US for a while, but Channel 4 are airing it in the UK now and I really want to watch it. So I thought I would read the book first. I talked about this in my TBR talk video I did a few months ago now, and I finally read it, which I'm really pleased about because I never really stick to my TBRs, but apparently I have, so that is a big bonus. I'm sure lots of you know what The Handmaid's Tale is about, but for those of you who don't, it was written in the 1980s and it is set in a world called the Republic of Gilead, which is a dystopian version of the US after some kind of environmental disaster has happened. We don't know what it is, but the constitution has broken. I'm not very good with the technical terms when it comes to all this, but the government, the US government has collapsed and the Republic of Gilead has taken over. There are different types of people. So in the world the main character lives in, Offred, she is a handmaid. There's a commander who has a wife, and then Offred is there to produce offspring because a lot of the wives of the commanders are barren, which is what they call them in the book. So Offred is basically there to have babies. Really scary actually, but I think the scary thing about this book is that it's so subtle. I was really surprised at that. I thought it was just going to be really awful stuff, and actually it's when you start thinking about it and start breaking it down, the way that Margaret Atwood crafts everything is that it feels very similar to our own society. It doesn't seem like much is happening, but actually when you start thinking about it, it's so easy to slip into something like this. And in fact, Offred says something like, it just happened one day, we woke up and things were different and we didn't even realise they were changing. It's a very scary book, like I said, but it is the subtleties that make it a modern classic and worthy of that modern classic status. I really enjoyed this. I don't know, I didn't enjoy it, enjoy isn't the word, but I thought it was an incredibly nuanced book, and I think that Margaret Atwood is an incredible writer and I'd like to read some more books of hers soon. So if you have any recommendations for me what I should read next, then let me know in the comments and I'll see what I can read next. And then the final book that I read in May was Queens of Geek by Jen Wilde, which I was so excited to read. I couldn't wait, I thought it was going to be great, and I ended up so disappointed. I couldn't finish it in the end and I left a review on Goodreads, which probably sums up my thoughts more coherently than I will say now. But I was so bored. Nothing happened in this book, there was no plot, I didn't particularly like the characters, it was so boring. I couldn't even tell you the main plot. They basically go to this convention, these 3 main characters. 2 of them I didn't really care about at all. I quite like Charlie, who was a YouTuber, and there was going to be a really cute romance and some really good bisexual representation again, which I needed, and I was looking forward to that, but I just didn't get that far into it because I got 100 pages in and I was like, nothing has happened, I don't know anything about these characters, and I'm bored. I'm so bored. And it was so unrealistic. There was a section and it was about one of the characters creating a Tumblr post, and I've never seen anyone write like that on Tumblr, never mind a teenager. It was like full beautiful prose and really serious, and they were in a line, in a convention line for a signing, writing a Tumblr post with perfect grammar, perfect everything. And I was like, I don't know any teenagers. I don't know any teenagers who act like this. If you aged up the characters 10 or 20 years, there would be no difference whatsoever. And as a teenager, that stuff really annoys me. For a YA book, I expect there to be realistic teenagers, but it was so unrealistic that I just got frustrated and I had to put it down. So I think some people have really enjoyed Queens of Geek, but it wasn't a book for me. I did not enjoy it whatsoever. So that was my May reading wrap up. Let me know in the comments what you read in May. What was your favourite book? Was there any books that you didn't enjoy as much? Because I think if you've watched this whole thing, then you'll realise there were some books I didn't enjoy as much. So let me know in the comments below and I will see you guys soon. Happy reading!